Right. Where were we?
I looked into your eyes and saw a world that does not exist. I looked into your eyes and saw a world I wish I was
So for those of you who haven't been following my social medias, the hard drive in my work computer gave up the ghost earlier this month. Major failure, trying to get the files off of it, but it's been pretty dicey. With some generous donations from my lovely followers, I've been able to get things together to get a new work computer, but since I probably have to recreate my knick-knack project files from scratch, it'll be a bit before I can get my main projects back into full swing. But I didn't want to leave you with nothing this month, so let's touch on a pre-knickknacks project that I never finished because, well, it wasn't getting a lot of views. But we are long overdue for a follow-up on the Everworld book reviews. For those just joining us, Everworld was a 12-book young adult series by Kay Applegate, aka the wife and husband team of Catherine Applegate and Michael Grant, which ran in parallel with their more well-remembered Animorphs series. This is what those two were focusing on while Animorphs switched over to a ghostwriter system. Aimed for a slightly older audience than Animorphs, Everworld tells the story of 4 teenagers, David, Christopher, April, and Jaleel, who are whisked away to the titular Everworld, a dimension to which all the old gods like Zeus, Odin, and Ra fled to once humanity started to be dismissive of them. Everworld seemed like a pretty cool place to hang out, except it turns out that planet Earth isn't the only place that has gods. The insectoid Hetwans have arrived in Everworld, and with them Ka-Anor, a god that eats other gods. Our protagonists arrive in the middle of this, being transported here by the magic of Senna, April's half-sister, David's girlfriend, and Christopher's ex-girlfriend. Now they bounce back and forth between worlds. Every time they fall asleep in Everworld, they temporarily enter their bodies in the quote-unquote real world, their bodies on a sort of autopilot in the meantime. The 4 of them want to get home on a much more permanent basis, so they travel Everworld in search of a way out. So yeah, it's pretty much an isekai anime. We've seen our heroes escape Aztec human sacrifices, meet Merlin and Loki's various children, and take on a dragon. And at the beginning of the 6th book, Fear the Fantastic, they've made a quick exit from Fairyland, only to find themselves in Hetwan territory. It is a strange, unsettling place. Armies of Hetwans fly overhead, and come daytime, odd, colorful, angular trees literally sing as they face the rising sun, and then literally scream as an army of giant ant-like creatures start rapidly cutting them down and chewing them into pulp. It leaves our heroes exhausted from all the running around, and eventually Christopher, this book's point of view character, falls asleep and spends some time in the real world. And to his dismay, he's job hunting. Now, Christopher Hitchcock is, without a doubt, the worst human being of our 4 protagonists. He's misogynistic, he's racist, he's constantly inappropriate, he gets drunk and gets into fights and then wonders why everyone's on his case. If this story took place today, Christopher would read Jordan Peterson and have a YouTube channel about how the Barbie movie is woke garbage. But this was the year 2000, where those online angry white boy outlets didn't really exist, not in the form they do now anyway. Not that those kinds of people weren't out there, looking for connections. Case in point, the manager of the print shop Christopher applies to. He was a small guy with a bad comb-over, but he had intense eyes. He stared at me, like staring meant something. Your people, where are they from? I shrugged. My dad's from Nebraska. My mom's from Naperville. Hitchcock, that wasn't changed from anything, was it? Like, Americanized? I was a millimeter away from saying, yeah, we changed it from Kwan Lee Ho, can't you tell? But I didn't. I just said, no, I don't think so. He nodded. You can't be too careful. I mean, this is still America. but it's not all America. You know what I mean? Waking up in Everworld, our heroes wander around a bit, unsure of what to do with themselves. At one point, they get caught by a Het-One patrol, but David manages to slay them with Galahad's sword. It seems like this is all it's going to be, an endless expanse of alien hostility. But then they turn a corner and bam! There's a really hot guy. The angel was beautiful, with a face dominated by immense, lustrous green eyes and framed by golden ringlets, and with a bow mouth and full lips and brilliant white teeth. And only then, only after I had felt this first rush of improbable carnal lust, did it occur to me that this angel was a man. The figure introduces himself as Ganymede, and the Greek mythology geeks smile and go, of course. Basically, the myth goes that Ganymede was a normal mortal shepherd that was amazingly attractive, so much so that Zeus saw him and did the Tex Avery wolf eyes thing, scooping him up, bringing him to Mount Olympus, making him immortal, and then giving Ganymede the job of cupbearer. And now when Zeus has a party, he's all, hey, check out my hot butler that I occasionally have sex with. It really ticks off my wife Hera. Of course, to get ahead of some of you in the comments, the understanding of sexuality in historical Greece wasn't how we think of it today, or at least that's what the historians think. In overly simple terms, it's believed that people of that place and time period didn't see sexuality as a social identity. Sexual desire was simply something that happened. At this specific moment, this man is sexually attracted to this other man. Whatever. Socially, the bigger issue is whether or not you were a top or a bottom, as the relationship with dominance and submissiveness was seen to reflect your station. This is ancient history, so there's debate to the specific natures of same-sex relationships, and lesbians are a whole other ballgame. But this is the historical and mythical perspective from which this book approaches Ganymede and the larger Greek pantheon. A perspective that does not apply to our protagonists, four American teenagers from the late 1990s, when being gay is both an identity and not widely accepted by the general public. When Ganymede tells his life story to the kids, Christopher remarks, "Whoa, Zeus is gay?" And Ganymede just has no idea how to respond to that. It's not that Zeus is gay, it's that Ganymede is so attractive that everyone lusts after him, including men. And including David and Christopher. Just a little bit. Enough to get their toxic, no-homo defenses up. David seemed distracted. He was, in fact, following Ganymede closely with his eyes. "Hey, you don't want to make Senna jealous," I said. David flared and grabbed a handful of my shirt. "What are you talking about?" I shoved his hand away. "Take it easy, you were checking him out, dude." "Screw you, Christopher, I am not gay." "Yeah, I'm not either, not even slightly." "You sure?" he hissed. "You were moving up close to him. Maybe that's why Senna dumped you, man." There's a reading here of both David and Christopher suppressing a level of same-sex attraction because of internalized homophobia. A Kinsey-style, everyone's a little bit gay thing going on. But I think there's another reading here where Ganymede, being of the ancient Greek pantheon, is inadvertently imposing ancient Greek sexuality on the two men, and they're freaking out because of, again, internalized homophobia. Anywho, Ganymede leads them back to his party, which is literally a party. A group of Het-One are escorting Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, to be eaten by Ka-Anor. Hey, if I'm about to die, why not have a great final party with nymphs and satyrs and Zeus's hot butler and just get plastered? At least that's what Dionysus wants the Het-One to think. Everything here, except the kids, Dionysus and Ganymede, are illusions, and Dionysus manages to sneak a message to Christopher. "Get us out of here, and I'll make you immortal." So our heroes hatch a plan. Dionysus creates a projection of a flock of female Het-One, whom male Het-One simply cannot resist, while Jalil uses his pocket knife, enhanced by Kuhatch steel, to cut through the bonds keeping Dionysus in place. They all steal some horses and make a run for it. Their new goal, to make it to Mount Olympus. But to get there, they'll have to pass through the Het-One capital city, which just so happens to be where Ka-Anor lives. So the pacing for this book is kinda not great. Set pieces come fast with a lot of downtime in between, and after a third fight scene in which 4 children dispatch a group of Het-One, the core villain faction of the series, The alien bugs start to diminish to the threat level of the Putty Patrol. Animorphs got away with tearing through cannon fodder enemies because their morphing technology allowed them to get seriously hurt too. But the 4 Everworld kids don't have that advantage, so they just kind of beat up the bad guys without getting anything more serious than the odd chemical burn. Christopher and April don't even have weapons. So in this book, everyone's mad at Christopher, and Christopher's mad at everyone. So every time there's a breather from the action, they just pick up the passive-aggressive hostilities from where they left off. It's a bit exhausting, and that's just the book's format. The subject matter is also quite heavy. Every time Christopher goes to sleep, he finds himself working at the print shop run by actual white supremacists, being made to print up neo-Nazi propaganda. Now, Christopher is a shitty boy, but going from, I love saying the N-word to rile people up, to, I believe they're trying to eliminate the white race, is a leap too far, even for him. But when Christopher quits the job, one of the white supremacists threatens Christopher and even cuts a swastika into Christopher's brother's bicycle. We're halfway through this series. We've already covered topics like childhood sexual abuse, ableism against neurodivergency, and alcoholism. It's clear by now that Everworld does not prioritize levity to help balance it all out. It is all bummers all the time, which in fairness is exactly what some young people want in their difficult pubescence. It's the kind of book you read along with Linkin Park's Crawling. There's definitely a space for this kind of thing, but if you're not into it, it can be a lot. And Fear the Fantastic isn't very interested in discussing where these extreme prejudices might come from. It doesn't give anything for Christopher to chew on. It's simply showing that these vile extremes exist. I suppose there's value in that when this was first published, in a time before tiki torches and Trump presidencies, but reading it now, you really want it to go deeper than surface level. Our heroes reach the capital city of Ka-Anor, which lies on the bottom of a massive crater. They ride on some gliding insects and have an aerial battle with some Hetwan, during which Ganymede saves Christopher's life, and Christopher tells the gorgeous man, whom he's been slinging gay jokes at all book, that he owes him one. Christopher never gets the chance to repay Ganymede. The capital city of Ka-Anor actually is a city, with more than just Hetwan walking around. There's actual people engaging with commerce. Disguised, our 4 teens, Ganymede and Dionysus, try to make it to the far side of the city. But Dionysus can't help himself. He conjures a small party to follow them around. This magic gets the Hetwan's attention, and they attack, capturing Ganymede while the rest make their way into the tunnels underground. Christopher is panicked beyond reason. The other 3 try to reassure him that maybe Ganymede got away, or maybe they can save him. But then they enter a large chamber full of Hetwan, and in the middle, they see Ka-Anor for the first time. He was vast, but he was no one thing. Ka-Anor was everything. Every nightmare, every terror, every image from every horror movie. He was a different thing, a different face, every time you blinked your eyes. A seething, towering mass of liquid filth. A screaming jaw filled with teeth like blood-soaked stalactites. A huge, exaggerated Hetwan with 100 eyes. An erupting volcano dribbling out burning corpses. Basically a morphing collage of everything that creeps you out, from Lovecraftian horrors to demonic imagery to AI hands. The teens and Dionysus hide and are forced to watch as Ganymede is terrifyingly torn apart and consumed by the God Consumer. The 5 of them manage to escape the city and make their way out of Hetwan territory, Mount Olympus on the horizon. The other 3 try to reassure Christopher that there was nothing he could do, but he seems convinced that the reason Ganymede was captured in the first place was because they didn't value him enough due to his homosexuality. Maybe I could have saved him, maybe not. But see, the bitch is, for that split second, when the Hetwan came down around him, that split second I thought, screw him. You know what else, David? My hero, David? So did you. David's jaw clenched. He said nothing. And we both know, David, we both know why we could let him go and think, screw him. Alright? We know, you and me. We're the same on that. Sure, okay, but if that was true, if Christopher ditched Ganymede because of his homophobia, you think that might have been expressed in the moment itself. This is first-person prose. If this was true, if Christopher had a moment of, screw the gay guy, I'm saving myself, then you think he'd actually express it in the narration. This moment marks a pivot for Christopher as a character, with Ganymede's death sending Christopher down a path of self-reflection and growth away from his immature bigotries. As he says in the final page of the book, some folks find religion, some folks join Alcoholics Anonymous. Me, I met a big gay Trojan. And that just sucks. Gay representation, even fantastical representation like Ganymede, was fucking rare in young adult media around this time. And while Fear the Fantastic is clearly saying that homophobia is wrong, it is still a book in which a gay character is introduced and then quickly killed off entirely in the service of the character arc of the cis straight white male protagonist. And it's not that Christopher had his prejudices actually challenged. Christopher didn't meet a gay man, realize that this gay man is just like any other person, and realize that his own perceived notions of gay men were wrong. No, a gay man showed up, saved Christopher's life, and then died a horrible, painful death. What is that teaching the kids? That if you're LGBTQ+, the best way to deal with bigotry is to save a homophobe from getting hit by a car and then getting murdered? This is exactly the kind of story that the pushback against Bury Your Gays was made for. And it's not like Ganymede is actually amazing gay representation for this kind of book, because he doesn't exist in the framework of contemporary culture. He's an ethereal, ancient demigod who exists outside of modern earthly prejudices and has a different way of thinking of these things. And outside of the arc concerning Christopher's homophobia, the whole thing is just kind of a rerun. We already did the protagonist meets and team up with a cool male character from mythology, but then the guy ends up getting horribly murdered by a giant monster thing with Galahad just a few books ago. And David even got a cool sword out of that. This version is a lot meaner, a lot more misguided, and doesn't push the story along nearly as much. This is one of those things I'm pretty confident Catherine Applegate and Michael Grant would do a lot better at today, both because of the conversations that have been had about LGBTQ+ representation in media over the last 23 years, and because of their personal ties with the community through their transgender daughter. But that hypothetical book does not exist, and instead I'm left with a well-meaning but depressing story of disposable minorities to make the straights feel bad about themselves. 99% of the reason I stopped doing Everworld books was because they weren't doing numbers, because I soon found a lot more success with knickknacks. But that loose 1%? I just don't like Fear the Fantastic that much. It's mean and depressing in shallow ways that puts a queer person front and center and then has an alien god strip the flesh off of him to drive home a poorly executed message. Everworld as a whole is a lot more depressing and unpleasant to read than its sister series Animorphs, which is infamously dark, but balanced itself out with science fiction weirdness, likable characters that didn't hate each other, and some actual humor to lighten the mood. Everworld stripped those elements away and simply amped up the dark stuff. And that can be really, really exhausting sometimes.